I'm Rimma Boshernitsan, the founder and CEO of Dialogue. Welcome to 10 by 20, a series of 10 questions discussed in 20-minute dialogues with local and international leaders doing visionary work at the intersection of people, technology, and society. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today, I'm super excited to welcome my friend, Garance Choko, the CEO of Coda Societies. Coda works with counties and regions to rethink and redesign large-scale social and physical infrastructure for equity. Welcome, Garance.
Hi, Rimma. It's nice to
Hello.
see you. Thanks for having me.
I know. Welcome back from your trip. Welcome back to talking to me once
Yes,
again about the fun stuff.
it's
Um,
always a pleasure.
yeah, well, as we discussed and as we kind of talked about this, 10 by 20 is 10 questions, 20 minutes. So we're going to start off with some interesting conversation and then we'll move into rapid fire.
Okay, let's see how we can keep ourselves, limited to 20 minutes.
No, that'll be a problem for sure. So to kick us off, tell me about you. Tell me about how you grew up and kind of a little bit about your background.
Well, you always started with an easy question, right? Uh, as everyone can hear, I'm from France originally. I was born and raised in Paris. I've been in the US for 15 years, but before that, yes, born and raised in Paris. It's important for me to always specify the fact that my mother is from the Caribbean and my father, who sadly passed away some years ago, was from Poland. And so my experience in France was one of immigration. So there is a common theme because in the United States, I'm also an immigrant. So, but yes, I grew up in Paris. And also what is essential to my upbringing is the fact that I discovered piano when I was 3 years old, and that have shaped my identity, that has allowed me to express my sensibility, and that has been guiding me throughout my life. And as you can see, the piano is still here with me today.
Yeah, tell me more about that. What specifically about the music or the piano? Is it the instrument or the fact that it can produce music that guided you?
Many different aspects of it. First of all, I think that the ability to just create beauty is a wonderful experience. And so music, has this aesthetic aim, and, to dedicate some time practicing, being disciplined about your practice because it doesn't come easy, right? Develop a technique to just at the service of expression and of aesthetic creation is a process that I feel very fortunate, to have access to.
Mm.
So that I think that there is also the having a channel for expression, and being able to express your sensibility, your emotion, your vision. A lot of messages, goes through music. So it's an incredible outlet.
Hmm.
Also, I think that the fact that it's an act that bring an audience together, right? So it's an act of communion where people from different background, different sensibilities, again, can come together and just exchange through silence, through music, not speaking, but just being in a specific space. So there are a lot of a ritualistic element that I also find very compelling.
I love that.
Thank
Who would you say has been most influential, like if, maybe a person in your child during the time that you were growing up? I know you mentioned your dad and your mom, kind of at the beginning, but sometimes it's not the parents that necessarily influence us the most.
I think that in my case, it's very much been my parents.
Awesome.
The fact that they were coming from such different background, but also had a common denominator, all were trying to understand each other. So being witness to this like constant dialogue, you know, was very enriching to me. And also being able to see the world from their different perspective. So I also, yeah, and I think that, France is not a country at the time that was easy for minorities, right? And so being in a home where I was given some tool to observe, deconstruct, understand my cultural, political, and and surrounding was very crucial to me. So I know that I'm very different from my parents, now, but I think that it would be fair to say that they very much, been instrumental in shaping my sensibility. Yeah.
So, just as we were talking, one of the things that came up for me was like, I wonder what the dinner conversations were like for you guys.
They were, yeah. They were very stimulating. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And I think it's also like what our parents are meant. It sounds like what our parents are meant to provide us. They definitely have served in that way, in terms of
Yeah.
providing the ways of seeing, ways of being, but also the space for you to move within the boundary or the kind of this. There's a French term that I'm thinking about that I don't even that I'm forgetting right now. That has actually I read about in a book about child raising. How there's like the cadre. Is it the cadre?
Le cadre.
Yeah.
Yes. Un cadre. Yes, exactly.
So I'm sure that and it sounds like that's kind of where they were pretty successful in giving you guys both, right? Because you have a sister as well.
I have a little sister who's also been instrumental in, in shaping who I am today. I think that the role of being, the big sister means a lot. You have to develop, a sense of leadership and responsibility, right? And wanting to set a positive example as much as you can. Yeah. But if we look further down, because as I'm thinking, not in my early childhood, but throughout my life, I think that my piano teacher, especially like the piano professor I had at the University of Miami, Dr. Zach Stein, has been very much influenced I've been an instrumental and influential figure in the development of my intellect and of my identity and personality and career beyond music. So music professors, who just transmit everything they have to you and create this very interesting relationship where they have to transmit kind of the intangible, right? So there is an art, but also there is like emotional, like how do you play something a certain way? So that create also a space and pedagogical tool that I think have been very useful to me.
Yeah. No, and what's interesting is I played piano for 12 years since I was 6 and then up until high school. And I also felt like I agree with you that it's so cerebral and so like formative, and you almost have to transplace yourself into the body of the composer to really understand what the music can mean for you.
Yep.
And I hated concerts. I hated performance. But I loved understanding and playing within the boundary of what was created by the composer, but interpreting it in a way that felt to me.
Yeah.
But also I can translate that directly into my personal fascination with the idea of, of what, the idea of design. And I want to kind of our conversation into that. So
yes.
I know, part of what you do with Coda is so much around, like you said, infrastructure and design and understanding how all the different elements are coming together for behavior change, for change social contract that you discussed. So I'd be curious, kind of what role do you see design playing in your life now, and how does it, what do you think about the value of it in our culture?
That's a good and very good question, and it's the answer can take books. So yeah, I want to summarize that. No, I think that's what's fascinating is that, yes, music taught me a process, right? And there is the idea like you're working very hard in a very logical, but using many part of your brain capacity to design something, to create something beautiful or something new, right? Because each interpretation, is different from the other, right? And also it entails a lot of complexity. And so in parallel to my musical education, I also, studied public policy and got in-depth education in political science, public administration, public policy, infrastructure development, economics, etc. And it is also a process. So the beauty of design is that it brought back to this field, these different areas of studies, it brought this creative component, right? So instead of being dry, so how can public administration, the study of public administration, the understanding of public policy, urban planning and infrastructure development can actually be structured in a way that is aiming to create something better, that is something improved, something new. And in my case, in the work that I do, is societies, right? So the design process, and just because we associate design to aesthetic, right? So we associate it to a process of making, to design something, but a design is an output that is pleasing. So I for me, it was helpful to juxtapose, to bring this creativity element, right, that I was used to in music, to the more academic or theoretical or hard world, tangible field of that I'm navigating through my work and using through my work. So design also, beyond that beautiful aesthetic component and this creative component, it's also demystifying the fact that things can be built. So design is a process, right? It's a series of steps. So often you think about, let me rethink a national healthcare system. Let me rethink a company, the culture of a company. Let me rethink an economic recovery plan for a city or for a country. Daunting. Good luck, right? So the design process allows to actually divide, to understand that there is a logic and a series of steps to build up something greater. Yeah. So that there is a two main aspect. Then you have I also, from a ethical perspective, believe in participatory design, right? So you bringing different actors to the creation of a solution, right? And so the design process also allows for that. So yeah. And I have many other chapters that I can talk about.
Probably a long conversation, but one thing that came up for me as I was listening to you is you have a very concrete way of thinking about the value of design in the context of the work that you do and beyond, of course, but in the context of the work and some of the examples you shared. I'm curious, what are you, through this, I imagine there's a lot of big questions that design also asks and answers. And so I'm curious, what are some of the big questions you're answering right now through your work, or some of the things that you're thinking about that are really top of mind for you?
Well, I think that in the description of my company's mission, we are stating clearly that the aim is equity, right? So I think that what I'm solving for is a continued evolution of the term of equity, right? And ensuring that we are promoting it, right? I think that as part of equity, there is also the idea of safety, right? And safety, and also the right of experience well-being and prosperity. And I think that you and I share histories where, our communities have not felt safe, have not been safe. When you look in the West or even in the global South, there is always the concept of safety always come to play. So we are witnessing more often than not time and places where people are unsafe. So what I'm solving for is attempting through my process, but also in the outcome, to create not safe space as the way it's used in a jargony and marketing way, but more so what are the elements that allow individuals to feel that they can express their identity, in a way that is safe, but also creative and also generative, and and in a way that can allow them to participate in shaping the social contract of their environment.
Yeah. Can you share more about the social contract piece? I think it's really important. What does that mean?
For me, I think that it has different definition. But I'm coming from France, right? So, and my education was very much anchored in, the beginning of my education, my high school education was like anchored in like French paradigm, right? And so a social contract to me is like, what does the space that you occupy, promises to, provide their community with. So as a country, is that what is the promises or the commitment, the implicit or explicit commitment that a government or a country or a nation makes to its citizen, right? So what are the value and the principles that inform the way in which we are interacting with one another? What is the definition of a good existence, right? And what are the values we want to emulate, right? And what are the values that we want to fight for and protect? The thing is that for me, a social contract for it to be valid, needs to be shaped by the entire community. And I think that before we were living in society that were more homogeneous, right? Or in societies where like it was very much, that were white supremacist, right? Meaning, and also male supremacist. So it was easier to come to like a shared definition, right?
Yeah.
Now that we're living in pluralist societies and demographics are changing and shifting constantly, creating the right process for social contract to be defined at the collective level, but also like question, right? And reassessed on a regular basis is very important. And I think this is where like what we're trying to figure out and solve for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like at the end, like, so you have a social contract, but then like infrastructures and policy, is what reflect the social contract and is also what bring about the social contract, right?
Yeah.
So if you want like a society where the social contract is people have access to education, right? People are free, okay? It means like mentally free, intellectually free, So it means that you need to create infrastructure that ensure that everyone has access to education equally. Everyone has access to health equally, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, yes.
Yeah. No, and I think it's the cloth that's like that you're weaving, right? That's sort of the thing that makes your work super interesting to me, because I think what you're finding is all of the relational value in society, and how do we bring that to the surface and actually think about what is it that we truly need as people, and then how do we work within our existing infrastructures, whether they're inhibiting or actually positively affecting us, to create equity for human beings. And that's so amazing.
No.
So I'm gonna take us into the last couple minutes of our conversation, into our rapid fire.
Already? Oh my god!
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
You went by fast.
So tell me, when your work is so much about connection, right? And kind of weaving connection and thinking about how things relate. And that's, I think, also why we're such good friends, just because we similarly like have passions about that. What do you feel? When do you feel most connected to others?
That's a very good question. I think that when I feel that that the parties involved are making an effort to listen and to understand, even though we might not agree, even though we might be surprised by the perspective, but attempting to create a shared understanding is when I feel most connected. And it's not easy. And it's an exercise, everyday exercise.
So much going on right now. I agree with you. Yeah. What intersection of disciplines are you most fascinated by right now?
Finance and infrastructure development.
Who's had the biggest impact on you?
I think it changed, but I would say that my piano professor, Dr. Zakstein, that I talked about in the beginning, has. Yeah.
What is your greatest regret?
I don't have any regret.
Amazing. What's the one thing you wish to pass down to the next generation?
The knowledge that they have the ability to build the environment and society they believe will feel the safest for the many. So not to think about themselves only, but think about the collectivity. And also, I think that like since now the concept of intersectionality is prevalent. It was not existing, like we knew about it, but we didn't have a vocabulary around it when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And so really using like intersectionality and as a basis to create system that works for the many. Always to also always solve for the underdog. Always design for the underdog.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Garance.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Rimma. It's always a pleasure. And you always ask the best questions.